Amanda, this is a business book, but not a business book, right? It's for people who just like interesting stories about often entrepreneurs, but people who invent interesting products and services which may be just totally obvious. It might be just a little bit of an improvement, and there's some great people in there, including someone that I knew. I brought along a sample.
Oh, Prairie Girl
Yes.
Bakery.
This is Jean Blacklock, is an estate lawyer, somebody that I used to talk to about wills, and I had no idea that now she is doing cupcakes, and I actually, as well as the bag, I bought 6 cupcakes in this amazing box that you write about, but I was juggling all this stuff and the bag tipped over, so a lot of it doesn't look so good anymore. But tell me about her and some of the other interesting people that you found.
Yeah, the book is funny because I'm a business journalist, obviously, and so you would think I would write a business book. But the thing I really wanted to write about that led me to this subject was productivity. And nobody wanted, somebody I guess might have published a book about productivity, but nobody wanted to read a book about productivity, certainly not written by me, because it's really boring. It's important, but it's really boring. But what I discovered talking to people about productivity, which is, productivity, it's a measure of wealth, it's falling in Canada, it means we're getting poorer, we're certainly in danger of leaving our kids poorer than we are, it's a crisis. So I cared deeply about it, and I started giving speeches about it, and I would talk to groups, and I would say, our productivity is falling, and we're all getting poorer, and we don't know why, and afterwards they would say, great, we're super scared, now what? And I didn't really have an answer. I wasn't offering any kind of solution. And so I started to look into, well, what is the entree point, what is the thing people can know and really understand about productivity? And it was innovation. And innovation is something that people can do and can care about and can relate to. A lot of us don't think of ourselves as innovators. And so the stories in the book, and there's a series of stories and there's some research in there, but it's the stories I think that make the book work, are stories like Jean's, which are simply designed to inspire, to remind us that this is not the stuff of Steve Jobs and Henry Ford. There are wonderful off-the-chart, what they would call step change innovators who make our worlds better, no question. But most of the innovation that goes on is incremental. And in the case of Jean, it was personal. She innovates constantly the way a small business person has to. It's a lot of the innovation a small business person does is problem solving, but she actually innovated her personal life. And that was the thing that ultimately became really compelling to me was these business concepts that could solve our productivity problem, by the way, have a great personal application. And we can make our lives better as we do them.
Right. You talk a lot in the book about you have to have the courage to fail, you have to be able to censor yourself. So, and you have to start a new path. Did you find writing the book that you had to change what you were doing because things weren't working?
I did. The book for me was a real personal journey. You've written so many books. Maybe you can't remember your first book, but because I think you were like 9 when you wrote your first book, Ellen. But I think people do experience that when you're writing a book that touches on your own experiences. It is often a kind of a transformational thing. In this case, the message that I found so compelling was not allowing the status quo to kind of rule your life, to set your agenda, remaining engaged. Engagement is a hugely important theme. It like literally means you're connected to what you're doing, and you can apply that professionally, you can apply it personally. It's so important. And then once you're engaged, your natural inclination to curiosity and changing things will just kick in, and it will. And you'll be happier. For me, the revelation was rejecting status quo, not being passive, not just letting your life happen, is actually the route to real happiness.
Right. And because you're fairly reserved on television, we don't know much about you. There's some nice personal bits in the book, including you and your twin sister, your identical twin, and how you sent her off to do your Dairy Queen job when you were young.
Yes. This is a story that I used to tell for years as one of those kind of funny anecdotes about your life. And when I was writing the book, and this notion of engagement, by the way, is a huge business issue. employees are not engaged. We go to work and we just dial it in. 62% of us just dial it in. And for a business, that's a crisis.
And that's why customer service is so bad.
That's why it's so bad. You're just sort of there, rote. So when I was 14, my first job was at a local Dairy Queen, and it was a small franchise in Winnipeg on Pembina Highway, if anybody's from Winnipeg. There you go. And it was a tiny place. So there was a little store, it wasn't a brazier, it was just the ice cream. There's a little store counter, and then just room for like a big fridge and a sink in the back and a back door. And I worked with my friend Emma Iliff, another 14-year-old, and we would play games like we'd hide in the back, and if the bell rang because a customer was coming in, we'd race each other out the back door into the alley, and whoever lost that race had to go serve the customer. Super excellent customer service. And the kind of nadir of my engagement in this job happened in August when I sent my twin sister in to work for me. And I do admit this in the book. It's kind of humiliating, actually. Adrian is sort of, she still is, actually. You do what Adrian says. She's alpha. She's in charge. If she were here, she'd kick us both off and tell you what to do. And so there was a party that I wanted to go to. And I didn't want to be left out, and I didn't think that the gang would wait until I got off work at 9 o'clock to go to the party. But I knew that if Adrian was at work, we would wait for her. So that was my devilish plan, is that she would go into work and we'd all wait and we'd all go to the party together. And so she went into the Dairy Queen and she puttered around for a while, and then a customer came in wanting a soft cone. Now, a soft cone is not open heart surgery, but somebody has to show you how to do it like once, right? Because there's a machine and there's a process. And she had no idea what she was doing. And so she ruined 3 in a row. And then the assistant manager turned around and looked at her and said, "Who are you?" And he was not amused, and he sent her home. And I went in the next day and was summarily fired, as I deserved. When I was writing the book and really researching engagement and the degree to which it matters to businesses, this story that I would tell as a funny story became a really humbling story, because some guy, and I'd met him once, had probably taken out a loan, mortgaged his house to buy this franchise, and this franchise was his future. And here I was, this snot-nosed kid who didn't care about the job, who was thinking about a party, and he couldn't afford to hire anybody but a snot-nosed kid. And it's that kind of disconnect. So now the point of the story in the book is, this is a serious problem. When your employees aren't engaged, they can mess with your future.
I think my favorite story, and I'd never heard of this before, was the 4 girls at Harvard who were doing an assignment and ended up with a commercial product involving a soccer ball that would store electricity. So talk about that one.
I mean, of all the people I met for this book, one of my absolute favorites is Julia Silverman. And I'll tell you why. They were art students at Harvard, and they were taking an engineering course. They had to take an engineering elective for some reason. That's Harvard, I guess. And so it was an engineering for art students kind of a course. And their project was design something that will solve a social problem that you're aware of. And their first solution was, they'd all traveled in the third world. There were four girls who just happened to spend some time in the developing world. And their first solution was a medical app that you would use in your handheld, so people could carry, which is, not a bad idea.
Yeah.
People would have their health records on an app. And the prof hated it, and he said, the best thing to do is leverage existing behavior. If you really want to make a difference, leverage something people are already doing. And they went back to their dorm room and they locked themselves in because they were going to fail, and they brainstormed. And the idea they came up with was just through talking about what happens in the developing world, and it came up that everybody plays soccer. In the developing world, kids play soccer. And they started talking about the problems of the developing world. And one they fastened on was a lack of available electricity. Kids in many countries live by kerosene. And kerosene is pernicious. A day spent beside a lamp is like a pack of cigarettes. So it's bad for their health. Things burn down. Often they can't afford that. And so when the sun goes down, there's no homework, there's no games, there's no nothing. And so they came up with this ball that with kinetic energy would produce electricity. So it's a soccer ball, looks like a regular soccer ball, and when you kick it for 30 minutes, you get 3 hours of electricity. You literally plug the ball in. It's called the Socket. They have a company called Uncharted Play, if you want to look it up. The Clinton Global Initiative has now backed it, and they send balls around the world. But what I love about Julia Silverman isn't that they solved this social ill, or that it's actually a wonderful innovation, which it is. It's the story she tells about taking the balls to kids, and she'll often do this herself. And she says, it's always the same. She takes a ball, and she goes somewhere where a kid has not ever really had his hands on a real ball. In his life, he's kicked a rock, if it was round enough, he's kicked a bag full of stuff. Like, they just don't have these toys. And the kid grabs the ball and runs off. Like, almost every time. She said they grab the ball, they run off. And she's like, wait, you don't know what's cool about it. Come back. But they do know what's cool about it. It's a ball. And so they go and they play, and then they come back 20, 30 minutes later, all breathless and happy, and then she plugs it in. And it's what happens next, she says, that makes her job and life worthwhile. Because suddenly their eyes light up, and their brains turn on, and they start innovating. And they start saying things like, what if you made the ball bigger? And what if we put a turbine on the side of the school? And she said what she's giving is, yes, it's a toy that they didn't have, and yes, it's solving a hugely important social issue, but she's giving them permission to think like innovators. And for her, that's the exciting thing, and that's why her story's in the book, because it is that simple. It's as simple as seeing an innovation and recognizing that that's what we're seeing, to know that we can do it too.
Well, children play a big role in your book and in your life. I know you have a couple of little ones, but they're good at asking why, as we know, because one why never leads to an answer that satisfies them. It's why all over again. And you talk about how we should become more like kids in how we ask why. And you talk about the education system. And then right at the end, you talk about a university in BC that I'd never heard of before called Quest, where they've built it in that way that it's more like fourth graders. The guy who started it was so impressed with the fourth graders who asked all the questions, and then he went to his university class and everybody said, what's on the exam, and what do I need to know, and what's the assignment date? So tell me more about that one.
Quest was, some of you may have read about it. The newspapers that I've seen since, sort of stories about it. I came across it because I was trying to answer the question, what kind of strides have we made in changing the way we educate kids? Because the way we educate kids, frankly, is we all know, for the 20th century, and we need a 21st century solution. And Quest is this amazing place where the first kind of key innovation is that they teach in a block system. So if you just think about the way your brain works, they'll teach a whole course. So it's 6 weeks of English and then 6 weeks of science. You're not doing 3 different things a day, because that's not how our brains work. So the block system is key, but the most important thing is the way they teach the kids is to learn how to learn. So David Helfand, who's the president, is also the chair of astronomy at Columbia, and that's where he had this disheartening experience with the Ivy League students. And when you learn first year astronomy, you need to learn something called Kepler's laws. Anybody know what Kepler's laws is? Any astronomers? It has to do with the way, forgive me for getting this wrong. It has to do with something about the way planets orbit things. So there's actually like some kind of theorem around that Kepler discovered. And instead of teaching the kids, these are Kepler's laws up on the board, you gotta learn them, you need to know these before you can get going, the way we all learned Newton's laws, he actually gives them a video of planets, he gives them a set of data, and they discover Kepler's laws themselves. Simple, right? But is that not exciting? If they could discover Kepler's laws, given the same information he had, what else could they discover? Rather than just kind of this notion that this is information you have to stick in your brain like it's, a piece of toast going in a toaster. And so that's their methodology, is teach kids how to learn and to love learning, and send them out to be lifelong learners, rather than just sort of a bunch of data they need to store.
Right. Kevin O'Leary's not in this book. Right?
It's true.
Yeah, but I saw you on YouTube saying that you were talking to people who are just like Kevin O'Leary in, I guess, their dedication to make money off any possible trend.
Yes. It's funny that Kevin's not in the book. I didn't mean not to put him in the book.
Oh, okay.
And then I realized once it was written that he wasn't in the book.
And he didn't ask you?
And I thought, he didn't ask me, and I thought, well, I guess he's not supposed to be in the book. I was asked a question about entrepreneurs, and it is a fact that entrepreneurs innovate relentlessly. And I do think people like Kevin who are, I was kidding around that his motive is money, although if you know him, that's also not a joke. But that can be a motive that works. That can actually be a motive that gets you to lots of good problems solved. So businesses, I tell the story lately about the fact that I bought a new toaster recently. And I bought the toaster like most of you buy toasters, which is for its size and color. But when I went to make toast for the first time, I realized it has a timer on it. So for the first time, I know if I want toast done medium, it takes 40 seconds. And if I want it done medium well, it's going to be 55 seconds. And it turns out you really need this timer. Like many people in this room have popped their toast early because you couldn't bear to wait another second for the toast. You don't know how long it's going to be. You can't stand there waiting. It turns out a timer solves that problem. That's the kind of relentless innovation that businesses do for money. It's a profit motive, but they've made my life better in the process, so we all win. They get the profit, I get the timer, everybody wins.
Yeah. Now, probably everybody in the audience thinks, well, it's all very well, there's these innovative people. But Amanda's view is that we're all innovators and we can all do it. And it's actually a self-help book, because during the book you have a lot of tips. So why don't you start telling us how we can be more innovative, both in business and in our own lives?
Well, so the first thing that Ellen said is that kids ask why. So there's really interesting research about how we drum the why out of kids, and it was drummed out of us too. The curiosity you had as a toddler when you pulled on somebody's leg, why, got drummed out of you. But that curiosity is actually a connector. It makes you think about things. You know, the power of why, it's a simplified title. It's not just the why, right? Because actually the most important thing to do is make sure you're asking the right question. Enough questions. It's not just one question, of course. But the very act of kind of acknowledging that you are an innovator. So if you read the book, I hope you take nothing else away other than you are an innovator. There's a spectrum of innovation. We're all on it. And the reason that's important is the ingredients of innovation are quite simple. They're just engagement, so connectedness to what you're doing at work, at home, doesn't matter. And then curiosity. Your brain is on and alive and awake to possibilities. Because the thing that I discovered, and I discovered it through actually meeting all these people that I interviewed, is it actually is the secret to happiness. Those two things, engagement and your brain on, equals happiness. And one of the most powerful ideas actually that I came across is the notion that style of thinking is the last bastion of diversity. We've done gender and race, working on sexual orientation, but we have yet to really truly acknowledge the extent to which we think differently. But when you think about it, how you think, literally how your brain gets information and then processes it, is who you are. Nothing else defines you. Everything else is just trappings, because you can take it all away. You can be a paraplegic, you can be blind, you can be deaf. If you can still receive information and process it, that is uniquely you. And so to me, that was a really powerful concept. And if we could acknowledge that about each other and start to kind of see each other in that unique way, there's some really interesting, ways, places we can go. Because in a way, that's what love is, right? Love is just recognizing each other.
You talked too
Wow,
about
it's like group hug now.
how businesses have to understand what the customer wants, which of course is obvious, but then you talk about how in our personal relationships too, we have customers, and how you have a value of being neat and tidy, and your customers, which are your kids, think, this is boring because I can't jump on the bed, and so you've had to relax your standards a bit. So it's obviously changed your life doing
Absolutely.
some of this
I mean, for me, the example was we have a very small cottage, but I went and got white duvet covers for every bed. 2 kids, a Labrador. Did I mention that it's small? So dumb, but they make me happy, and I'm always making the beds. And the kids do not want to make the beds, and they do not want to keep their feet off and so they don't. That's their end of the deal, and I get that. I will always go around making the beds, because that's my end of the deal, and that works for me. Clay, do you guys know Clay Christensen? Harvard prof, wrote The Innovator's Dilemma. He's like the guru of innovation. Clay is to smart what Gandhi is to good. He's just off the chart smart. And I talked to him for the book, and he said he thinks the jobs that we do as humans really haven't changed over thousands of years. So Caesar wanted to send a package from here to there. He would get a chariot and a slave, and off it would go. Now you call FedEx. But it's the same job, package A to B. And he said the job of a husband is something that he has thought about. He doesn't think it's changed much. But the most important thing is to think, what's the job his wife thinks a husband should do? What's the job he is doing? And how do those match up? And how often do we do something as simple as that? Right? What do my kids really want from me, and what am I delivering to them? That simple exercise is kind of powerful.